Hello students, welcome to the lecture on sourcing and pricing, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Explain the concept of sourcing, define supplier rating and assessment, understand supply chain collaboration, describe procurement function and sourcing strategy, understand pricing and revenue management in the supply chain, explain the seasonal demand, define spot and bulk contracts. Let us first start with the term sourcing. In business, the term sourcing refers to a number of procurement practices aimed at finding, evaluating, and engaging suppliers of goods and services. Outsourcing, the process of contracting a business function to someone else. Global sourcing, a procurement strategy aimed at exploiting global efficiencies in production. Strategic sourcing, a component of supply chain management for improving and re-evaluating purchasing activities. Net sourcing, a practice of utilizing an established group of businesses, individuals or hardware and software application to streamline or initiate procurement practices by tapping into and working through a third-party provider. Inverted sourcing, a price volatility reduction strategy usually conducted by procurement or supply chain person by whom the value of an organization's waste stream is maximized by actively seeking out the highest price possible from a range of potential buyers, exploiting price trends and other market factors. Outsourcing. Outsourcing is a process of contracting an existing business process which an organization previously performed internally to an independent organization where the process is purchased as a service. Though this practice of purchasing a business function instead of providing it internally is a common feature of any modern economy. An outsourcing deal may also involve transfer of the employees involved to the outsourcing business partner. Reason for outsourcing. The most common reason why companies decide to outsource include cost reduction and cost savings, the ability to focus its core business, access to more knowledge, talent and experience, and increase profits. Many companies decide to outsource because it cuts costs such as labor costs, regulatory costs, and training costs. This motivates companies to outsource overseas to find foreign workers who are willing to work for these lower wages. Company can spend up to half the usual cost to train these workers to become experts in a different country. Lower regulatory costs are in addition to companies saving money when outsourcing. Companies are able to focus their money and resources more towards improving the core aspects of its business when outsourced. The prices are reduced for services as well as products when purchased at a cheaper price. With outsourcing, the company must only locate a reliable and high-quality vendor, pay the vendor for the services provided. Advantages of outsourcing are lower costs. Lower costs are perhaps the prime benefits of offshore outsourcing. We can get work done at a fraction of the cost that we would have to spend locally while getting better quality as well. Skilled expertise. Finding skilled resources is one of the biggest challenges faced by companies today, not to mention the investment required to train employees and the attendant infrastructure required, which can rapidly drain funds. Outsourcing frees companies from these hassles by providing access to skilled resources at lower cost, with the additional benefit of not having the burden of managing them directly. Time zone difference. Because of the time zone difference between Asian countries and the West, we can get our work done while our business closes down in the evening. This is especially beneficial for companies in the service industry that need to provide round-the-clock customer support. Focus on core competencies. As a company grows, administrative functions also grow. Managing back office operations, administrative function takes the time and energy out of any organization. Increase productivity and efficiency. Outsourcing not only brings cost advantages but can also improve the efficiency of business operation. If the business goals are properly aligned with the deliverables in outsourcing, productivity and efficiency are bound to increase. Outsourcing providers with the right expertise and experience can actually help streamline business processes and contribute to the bottom line. Improving customer service. Customer service is paramount to any organization. Through outsourcing, customer gets faster service, provide better quality and decrease turnaround time. Disadvantages of outsourcing are loss of manager control. Whether we sign a contract to have another company perform the function of an entire department or single task, we are turning the management and control of that function over to another company. Hidden cost. We will sign a contract with the outsourcing company that will cover the details of the service that they will be providing. Anything not covered in the contract will be the basic for us to pay additional charges. Threat to security and confidentiality. The lifeblood of any business is the information that keeps it running. If we have payroll, medical records or any other confidential information that will be transmitted to the outsourcing company, there is a risk that the confidentiality may be compromised. If the outsourced function involves sharing proprietary company data or knowledge, this must be taken into account. Quality problems. The outsourcing company will be motivated by profit. Since the contract will fix the price, the only way for them to increase profit will be to decrease expenses. Insourcing. Insourcing is a business practice in which work that would otherwise have been contracted out is performed in-house. Insourcing often involves bringing in specialists to fill temporary needs or training existing personnel to perform tasks that would otherwise have been outsourced. Insourcing can be viewed as outsourcing as seen from the opposite side. Advantages and disadvantages of insourcing. Insourcing is a strategic business and human resources alternative to outsourcing. Outsourcing is a process of turning over one or more critical business function to third-party companies such as call centers or transportation. Insourcing means building up or adding new business activities in a company that has been or could be outsourced. Control. A primary advantage of insourcing is increased control. This is what motivates many companies to switch from outsourcing to insourcing. They want more control over the time, resources and results of the work. System design. Companies can develop and execute their own plans in a specialized area with insourcing, as opposed to turning these elements of work over to an external provider. The company can integrate the new or growing specialization into the organizational structure and develop reporting procedures, monitor progress on the work, make adjustment to policies and procedure as necessary, and hire, train and terminate employees depending on performance. Lowest cost. A primary disadvantage of insourcing and a common reason many common outsource is the lowest cost factor. Developing nation with large population centers and growing business and industry are prime grounds for outsourcing of such processes as supply chain, distribution and call center support. Labor in these countries is often less expensive. This is especially true for larger corporations that would have to hire hundreds of thousands of workers to operate warehouses or man phones. Core business focus. Another common argument against insourcing is that it takes our company's focus away from core business activities. IT, which is not often considered a core business function, is one of the most debated specializations with regard to insourcing or outsourcing. In-house versus outsourcing. Every business has to determine whether they should perform a service themselves in-house or outside that particular service to an outside vendor. Marketing and response management are just two of the services that can be performed either in-house or outsourced to a vendor. If a service is provided in-house, a company must locate a qualified employee, train the employee, pay employee wages and benefits, provide the employee a physical workspace, provide the required technology items, computer, phone, internet access, copier, fax machine, etc. pay telecommunication costs, phone line, inbound toll-free calls. Services of this type would also require coverage during absences of the primary resource such as scheduled vacation, unscheduled sick days, unscheduled family leave, paternity leave. With outsourcing, the company must only locate a reliable and high-quality vendor, pay the vendor for the services provided. Now we will study the supplier rating and assessment. Supplier rating or vendor rating, as it's sometimes referred, is a business term used to describe the process of measuring an organization's supplier capabilities and performance. Supplier rating often forms part of an organization's supplier relationship management program. Problems with supplier rating. Effective supplier rating requires a consistent and objective approach where rating criteria are open to interpretation. Inaccuracy can be introduced. This is especially true where subjective criticism from buyer is introduced into the rating process. History is not always a guide to future performance, and suppliers should be consulted as part of their assessment. Supplier assessment. There are various processes in the supplier assessment. Challenge. Solely relying on supplier pricing and terms of sale for contract awards ignores an equally important element of the relationship, supplier performance. Without making either a financial commitment or doing an extensive audit of a supplier's site, how can we minimize supplier performance risk? Solution. With the assessment module, we can gather more information about a supplier's performance, including suppliers' lean manufacturing, quality and supply-based management practices using a gap analysis methodology that compares the supplier against industry best practices. The analysis allows us to compare potential suppliers to each other in advance of contract awards, as well as to assess root causes for ongoing supplier performance problems. Eliminate inefficiencies in assessment initiatives. The assessment model allows performing supplier assessment virtually using a broad range of inputs. This helps to eliminate the inefficiencies typically found in supply-based assessment initiatives and frees up our time to focus on supplier.
Hello, my name is Jack, and I am an ordinary business owner. I need a quick and easy way to find reliable international sock suppliers. The suppliers should have competitive pricing, but more importantly, they need to be reliable, capable, and trustworthy. When I search for sock suppliers online, there are simply way too many options. Contacting them one by one is time-consuming. Talk about information overload. What do I do? We present you with Supplier Assessment at Alibaba.com. Every supplier in Supplier Assessment has been verified by world-class third-party verification companies like Bureau Veritas and Tuv Rhineland, each with over 100 years of experience. You can download accurate assessment reports to learn about the management of the company, the equipment they use, where they export, and more. These comprehensive and in-depth reports can help you make better decisions when choosing the right supplier. On top of that, these suppliers' main product lines have been verified by the third-party verification agency to help you source with confidence. Best of all, through a 3-minute video produced by Alibaba.com, you can see the actual company and the environment of each supplier. Ready to find reliable suppliers with ease? Now you can. Go with Supplier Assessment.
Supply chain collaboration. Collaboration means that all companies in the supply chain are actively working together in union toward common objectives. It is characterized by sharing the information, knowledge, risk, and profits. It is joint action by original equipment manufacturers (OEM) and vendors who cooperatively perform the tasks necessary for the entire supply chain. Such joint action results in interpenetration of organizational boundaries because personnel from the two streams share resources and responsibility as they conduct activities in highly coordinated and integrated ways. Models of supply chain collaboration. Different collaboration models have also been identified from the literature. The at arm's length Model economic theory advocates an arm's length relationship between the vendor and the customer for both to get the best out of the relationship. The at arm's length model calls for the simplest form of interfacing two firms, which is to facilitate data transfer at boundary level transaction. Data on purchase orders, shipments and deliveries can be moved electronically from the vendor firm's computer to the customer firm's computer. The tightly coupled model. The rationale for this approach stems from the fact that the supply chain as a whole has to be efficient and cost effective. The competition in future is set to be not between firms but between supply chains. Given the variability in demand and supply sides, the endeavor should be to minimize variability rather than its impact to cut inventory right across to avoid stock out situation and to be the most cost efficient producer. The loosely coupled model. The loosely coupled model, also known as orchestration, assumes a high flexibility of partner and product reconfiguration. Most loosely coupled design employ a modular approach where the focus is on defining standardized interfaces across modules of activity. A modular structure is applied to products, processes and supply chain resources so as to enable quick integration with resources and capabilities of partner organization. Now we will discuss the procurement function and sourcing strategy. Procurement function. Procurement function is considered to be a strategic initiative and seen to be adding value to entire business process. Profile of the procurement manager has changed and expectation from these managers are different. Procurement function is one part of the sourcing function. In an ERP-enabled environment, procurement function consists of detailed identifying process, procurement budget management, purchase order release, shipment schedule planning with seller coupled with ensuring compliance with documentation and system updating processes. All these processes are driven by ERP. Sourcing strategy. Though interlinked closely, both procurement process and sourcing strategy are not one and same. Sourcing strategy deals with planning, designing, and building a reliable and competitive supplier base, determining the strategy for procurement, defining pricing strategy, and supply chain requirement. The strategy involves integration of its objective in line with or conforming to the objective of stakeholders in operation, finance, marketing, and distribution.
During the first phase, we investigate the different options for sourcing modes. The three elements, location, ownership, and management style, are plotted in our global sourcing strategy model. This results in 8 different sourcing modes. We work with you to identify the appropriate sourcing modes for your specific situation. The next phase is to plan the scenarios. We use matching business cases to find the most beneficial sourcing mode. When the right sourcing mode has been selected, your organization must be prepared for implementation. During this phase, we support you in selecting the right service provider or help you to set up your own shared service center. We prepare your organization for the shift of workload that will follow. During the migration or transition phase, the governance model must be aligned. Critical knowledge and experience must be captured. This phase is also the time to train your organization for the new situation. In addition, service levels and key performance indicators will be defined. In the delivery or operations phase, it is important to continuously monitor, control, and manage both the service provider and the demand organization. By doing this, we ensure that both short and long-term benefits accrue. Organizations change. Environments change as well. After selecting and implementing the right sourcing mode, it is essential to continuously evaluate and adapt your chosen sourcing strategy.
Let us now discuss meaning of pricing and revenue management in the supply chain. Pricing is an important lever to increase supply chain profits by better matching supply and demand. Revenue management is the use of pricing to increase the profit generated from a limited supply of supply chain assets. Ideas from revenue management suggest that a firm should first use pricing to achieve some balance between supply and demand and only then invest in or eliminate excess. Revenue management has a significant impact on supply chain profitability when one or more of the following conditions exist. The value of the product varies in different market segments. The product is highly perishable or product wastage occurs. Demand has seasonal and other peaks. The product is sold both in bulk and the spot market. Revenue management technique has been successfully applied to airline, railway, hotel and resort, cruise ships, healthcare, printing and publishing. Revenue management has considerable potential for manufacturing operation as well. Revenue management for multiple customer segments. Airline seats are a good example of market with multiple customer segments. Airline use advanced purchase restriction to segment its customer into different fare classes and dynamically adjust the seat capacity assigned to those fare classes as advanced sales orders arrived. For instance, business travelers are willing to pay a higher fare to travel a specific schedule for convenience and even order at the last minute, while leisure travelers are willing to shift their schedule to take advantage of lower fares. There are two fundamental issues that must be handled to apply the concept of revenue management. First, how to differentiate between two segments and structure its pricing to make one segment pay more than the other. Second, how to control demand such that the lower price segment does not utilize the entire available asset. To successfully use revenue management when serving multiple customer segments, a firm must use the following tactics effectively. Price based on the value assigned by each segment. Use different price for each segment. Forecast at the segment level. Revenue management for perishable assets. Any asset that loses value over time is perishable. Fruits, vegetables and pharmaceuticals are perishable. Perishable assets also include products such as computer, cell phone, fashion apparel that lost value as new model introduced. There are two revenue management tactics used for perishable assets. Vary price over time to maximize expected revenue. Overbook sales of the assets to account for cancellation. The first tactic is suitable for assets such as fashion apparel that have clear date beyond which they lost a lot of their value. Apparel designed for certain season does not have much value in the end of the season. The second tactic is suitable if customers are able to cancel orders and the value of asset drops significantly after deadline. Airline seats, product design, especially for Christmas and production capacity at a supplier are examples of this asset. Revenue management for seasonal demand. One of purposes the use revenue management for seasonal demand is to shift demand from the peak to the off-peak period. Thus can get better balance between supply and demand and also generate higher overall profit. Revenue management for bulk and spot customers. The fundamental trade-off here is similar to the case revenue management for multiple customer segments. The firm needs to decide on the amount of the asset to reserve. For spot market, higher price, the reserve quantity will be affected by difference in margin between the spot market and the bulk sale and also the distribution of demand from the spot market. Perishable products. Perishable products are those that worsen in quality over time and become lesser in value. Perishable goods decay rapidly if not refrigerated or if some other preservation technique is not employed. Common perishables. Common perishable goods include foods, medication, plants and agricultural products. Dairy products, fish products, fruits and vegetables are examples of time and temperature sensitive perishable products that can rot or spoil easily. Consumer interest in purchasing particular products only during a specific period within the calendar year, for example, Christmas ornaments and snow ski equipment are subject to seasonal demand. Seasonality is a predictable, cyclic or repetitious behavior in demand for products. Seasonality is distinguished from fluctuation in demand due to noise or casual activities like price or promotionally driven demand in that it varies independently of these factors. Seasonal demand variation is often tied to weather, holidays, or specific events. Challenges in estimating seasonality indices. The seasonality model is a rather naive approach that works for long, smooth seasonal time series. Yet there are multiple practical difficulties when estimating seasonality. Time series are short. Lifespan of most consumer goods do not exceed 3 or 4 years. As a result, for a given product, sales history offers on average very few points in the past to estimate each seasonal index. Time series are noisy. Random market fluctuation impact the sales and make the seasonality more difficult to isolate. Spot contracts. In finance, a spot contract, spot transaction or simply spot is a contract of buying or selling a commodity, security or currency for settlement, payment and delivery on the spot date, which is normally 2 business days after the trade date. The settlement price or rate is called spot price or spot rate. Bulk contracts. A bulk agreement is an agreement whereby an unsecured creditors force a business to give a portion of the sale proceeds from an asset sale to an escrow agent. Escrow agent holds a portion of the proceeds typically in an interest-bearing account until the sale is final and then gives the funds to creditors. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Sourcing refers to a number of procurement practices aimed at finding, evaluating and engaging suppliers of goods and services. Outsourcing is a process of contracting an existing business process which an organization previously performed internally to an independent organization where the process is purchased as a service. A supplier rating or vendor rating, as it's sometimes referred, is a business term used to describe the process of measuring an organization, supplier capabilities and performance. Collaboration means that all companies in the supply chain are actively working together in union toward common objectives. Sourcing strategy deals with planning, designing and building a reliable and competitive supplier base, determining the strategy for procurement, defining pricing strategies and supply chain requirements.